view when I looked at the article on lots of different levels from an organizational point of view, because you care about your organizational reputation, you care about your stakeholders, you care about your customers, and candidly, you care about your own reputation. If you've spent time as a professional paying your own way through school, working hard as you can and doing the right things, and seeing someone to write something that says, some say. Well, some say a lot of things. At the end of the day, if one really wanted to look and say that my premise is that you're making a choice, that you're making a decisional choice to hire people who are under 40 versus people over 40, there are ways to answer that question demographically, right? It's an analytical approach that one would take, because I've looked at the journalistic code of ethics that you have, and there's a balancing act. And I think a reasonable expectation that you would balance what someone says versus what their analysis would tell you. And if you're going to start the premise that the person who comes and says something to you is accurate, and the other person on the other part just gets to respond, that you didn't start with a blank sheet of paper, that's the problem. That's what I really see as the problem. Is sort of the article is already written, the bad guy is already identified, and let's ask him for a sentence so that we can finish our article.
You felt that happened in several cases, and you did something that very few people do. You responded point by point and asked for retractions each time and did not get one. Tell me about your relationship with that particular organization during that period of time in terms of trying to get them to see what you've just told us, to start with a blank sheet of paper and do an analysis to try to prove your point.
We've tried, and I've personally tried to have those communications. I sort of have concluded, and I've had different experiences with newspapers here, some of which, if you can really get people to focus in on looking at the obvious, factual, quantitative data, most folks sort of move towards that direction. It's not been successful with KPBS. To some degree, I think if you sort of pull the leg out of one of those chairs, the whole chair starts falling down. And I think that's why they've been very, very reluctant in the face of things that are pretty straightforward to not do a correction. Because if you actually look at it and say, well, based upon that quantitative analysis, some of it's pretty clear. There was one article written that said, I walked in and contracted out three service modes. Well, in fact of the matter, it's easy to see that when I walked into the door that those services were already contracted out. But there was a correction made on an article that's on the web. I think it's about 7 pages at the bottom of the article. But the rest of the other corrections that are associated were never made.
Now, did you go to other media and try to get them to tell your side of the story? Did you go to the local newspaper, which obviously, of course, is now the only newspaper, but did you speak with North County reporters and maybe television stations and radio stations, trying to get some relief here?
No, we've done some things sort of in response. If we've been in a media outlet and someone has asked a question. I think candidly what I've seen is the other side, is media outlets picking up articles from KPBS and running them. And then when you send that same demand for retraction of newspapers relying upon what KPBS and not independently having vetted the information itself. I mean, one of the things that I would say for the students here and for the profession is that we talk a lot about the police code of silence. Within the media, there is clearly a code of silence and clearly, a desire not to call people to task for clear things that fit outside of your journalistic standard.